Welcome to the Stockyards National Historic District in Fort Worth, Texas. Every fourth weekend in October, we present the Red Steagall Cowboy Gathering and Western Swing Festival. This weekend, we celebrate the history, traditions, values, lifestyle, and the working skills of the men and women who make their living horseback, working cattle, providing beefsteak for the dinner tables of America.
A lot of folks think it's all over. The cowboy has outlived his time, an old worn-out relic, a thing of the past. The truth is, he's still in his prime. See, the cowboy is the image of freedom, hard-riding boss of the range. His trade is a fair one. He fights for what's right, and his ethics aren't subject to change. And he still tips his hat to the ladies and lets you water first at the pond. He believes a day's pay is worth a day's work, and his handshake and word are his bond.
In just a moment, we'll visit the chuck wagon camp and experience the sights, sounds, and smells of chuck wagon cooking. Stay with us.
In the Bunkhouse is brought to you by the American Quarter Horse Association, Sooner Trailers made in El Reno, Oklahoma, Cactus Saddles, the choice of champion, Cactus Ropes, Let's Go Rope, Resist All Hats, Best All Around, The Shoeing Shop, located in Yucaipa, California, Cactus Gear, Get Your Horse in Gear, Heel-O-Matic, real people, real results. By Cowboys and Indians Magazine, the premier magazine of the West. And by the National Ranching Heritage Center, located on the campus of Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas.
Fort Worth was the last supply point on the Chisholm Trail before the herd crossed the Red River into Indian Territory on their way to the railheads in Kansas. 6 million head of cattle came through this part of the country on their way north. The chuck wagon was and is the center of social life for the cowboy. It was their commissary, hospital, and gathering place, both on the trail and on the big western ranches. At our event, these wagons compete for 4 food groups plus all-around wagon. And everything in their camp must be in or on their wagon as they approach the campground. They must be equipped and capable to head north to Kansas. Let's take a look.
Oh, it's a 1918 Peter Shuttler. It stands number 6 registration in the Hall of Fame, Cowboy Hall of Fame, Oklahoma City. You know, it's all original. They've pulled it on ranches, they've pulled it parades, you know, just hook a team horses up to it, pull it anywhere. So, yeah. And it's truly just a trail wagon.
Henry Jennings is a 4-time overall chuck wagon champ at our event.
It takes a lot of work. Just don't win it coming with a pot and pan, starting how to do it all.
Henry grew up with an understanding of the history of the cow country. He knows the feel and the importance of getting the heat right when cooking in Dutch ovens.
But I think we've got an edge on a lot of the people cooking on these fires. There's been a North Amarillo on the Estacado of the High Plains where we really, you know, we cook in the wind, a 40-mile-an-hour wind. So we don't need a pit, we don't need nothing. I mean, you know, throw up and cook, you know. So that really, I mean, control that fire is 90% of winning this thing. You got the fire right, you can win.
Supper at Henry's Wagon will make any cowboy feel at home and well fed. It's very important to him that his entire menu is the best meal it can possibly be.
The meat that Bill had gave us and all, it's particularly top round. It was all sliced, tenderized. We breaded that up and made a chicken fry out of it. You know, along the side of it, made a green chili stew to be able to pour over top of it. A little speed, spice, heat. And then our sourdough bread that we always cook. Fired up a pot of beans here at 6 o'clock, cooking on them ever since. So, same old, you know, then more bread pudding, bread we made yesterday, tore it all up, put it in a pot, and a little sugar and rum on top of it. And away we go.
Henry has a great crew, and all of them share Henry's view of a successful and efficient cow camp.
I don't know, I think this is my 11th year with Henry. And then, you know, but I've kind of liked cooking my whole life. My mom and dad are good cooks, and then just carried it on into this.
They also adhere to and appreciate the history of the chuck wagon.
How more historic can you get than the Fort Worth Stockyards? You know, and they you know, the ranch rodeo, the wagon. You know, as far as where we're concerned, the wagon. You know, it's a true trail wagon. It's, you know, it's Western. You know, and you know some of the shows. You know, and I'm not knocking other shows or nothing like that, but they let them get a little commercialized. And this deal here, they try to really work it, keep it, you know, to its heritage. You know, and I think a lot of people get to look at that and see, you know, that you can't pop everything in the microwave. You know, it's, you know. So.
I hope you enjoyed our trip through the wagon camp. Now let's move over to Mule Alley. Take a look at our trade show and perhaps hear some cowboy poetry and music as well. We'll be back in just a minute. As we stroll through the trade show, we can find anything our mind can imagine or our heart desires in the world of Western gear and clothing and so forth. Under the tent and in the sale ring, we'll hear some of America's finest musicians and poets.
Cowboy poetry is a very important part of our event, as well as a major element in the preservation of our Western lifestyle. The winner of our senior division is Caden Robinson.
Well, I just started writing about 2 years ago, and I entered it in here, and my poem ended up getting selected as one of the 10 in the senior division, and I came up here and I recited it for them, and they seemed to like it quite a bit, and I ended up getting a pretty good scholarship off of that.
I'm honored that some of the younger poets consider me an inspiration, and I'm humbled that one of Caden's favorite poems is one that I wrote.
The fence that me and Shorty built, it's one of my favorite poems.
And I'd like for you to hear Cade's winning poem.
I was 4 years old when Daddy brought her home. We put her in the lot so she wouldn't be overgrown. She was big and long and had a wide old rear, black and shiny, with a little bit of ear. She stomped and bawled and raised all kinds of heck. She done run my daddy over and Bert near broke his neck. After a few weeks, she finally settled in. I think she knew that I was gonna be her friend. And this old gal was special, we finally figured out. After her 4th calf, we knew there was no doubt. Not one of her calves did we ever have to pull. But then we got to thinking, shoot, they've all been bulls. Most cows have a favorite tree where they like to stand in the shade. We had one old mesquite. That's where she stayed. Well, it's February again under an old frosty moon. It's time for her to calve, and it's gonna be soon. A few days later, I was waiting in the truck. Daddy hollered and said, 2 this time. How's that for luck? Well, that makes 10 and not a heifer yet. I'm dang sure glad I didn't place no bets. Well, in my mind, I'm almost a man, doing a lot of odd jobs and saving what I can. Well, that old cow's getting pretty old, but there's 11 Brangus bulls in this county that I've done sold. I got a call from Mom today. She said, "Daddy found your cow, and she's just passed away." We buried her under her favorite tree. That's where she liked to stand, so that's where she needs to be. My hope to go to college one day has been financed by her in a very special way. I put a marker on her grave, and this is what it read: "Here lies the best cow ever, my old friend, Miss Buckethead."
Right along. I stalked the Lone Star Grab.
Other than our contestants, the most important ingredient of our poetry contest are the educators who encourage our youngsters to write poetry and work at it hard enough to win a scholarship.
When they start getting into it, they just light up and they really take pride in themselves. I get to meet their personalities in it because a lot of times I'll get, "I can't write a poem, Miss Freeman." Like, yes, you can. You just start writing down your thoughts and then you put it together where it flows, and then they realize that they can do poetry, and then you start to see a little joy that they actually created something themselves that sounded good and everybody enjoyed.
I think you can guess who I am. I'm a cowboy.
The fiddle has always been the favorite instrument of any band in our part of the world. Let's see what the future of our music sounds like. We're very proud of our youngsters and their accomplishments. The scholarships that we award each year help a large number of student winners to get a good start on a college education. We'll be right back with scenes from our ranch rodeo. Our ranch rodeo shows off the skills of the cowboys and cowgirls that they use every day on the ranch. I know you'll enjoy the action.
It takes a partnership between a cowboy and a good horse to separate an individual cow from the rest of the herd. The team is judged by the number of cattle separated in the shortest amount of time. A rancher must be able to identify his own stock. We do that by applying the rancher's own special mark to the animal's hide, his brand. On a cold, frosty morning, even a gentle horse will come unglued and try to unload his rider. Every good cowboy learns how to stay on a bronc the best he can. Sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. The future of our agricultural society depends upon the education of our youth. It's important to all of us to encourage our young folks to participate in ranch-related activities. These young people, from 3 to 6, feel just as important as a grown person when they're on the back of that sheep. It takes a team to subdue, brand, and doctor large cattle. This event gets a little wild. A rope on the head and one on the heels is an efficient and effective way to immobilize an animal to doctor it out on the range. This looks like a spectator event, but if the cow has a bad infected udder out on the range, the cowboys have to immobilize her and treat the infection. The calf is a rancher's paycheck, so in order for the calf to grow up healthy and strong, he or she must have mother's milk. An infected udder is a detriment to the health of the calf. This event is really Western, and cowboys get stomped on.
Every cowboy and cowgirl loves to go to the dance after the rodeo. We hope you've enjoyed our event so far. We'll be right back with more scenes from the Red Steagall Cowboy Gathering and Western Swing Festival in the Stockyards National Historic District in Fort Worth, Texas. I'd like to do a poem for you that I wrote back in 1989. It's about the land. And as I travel across this country, I'm heartened by the families who have been on the same place 5, 6, 7 generations. It's important that we protect our lands. It's important that we protect the people who feed us. Our rangelands and our farms are so important to us. I've kicked up the hidden mesquite roots and rocks from the place where I spread out my bed. And I'm laying here looking at a sky full of stars with my hands folded up beneath my head. And tonight, there's a terrible pain in my heart, like a knife that cuts jagged and deep. This evening, the windmiller brought me the word that my granddaddy died in his sleep. So I saddled my gray horse and rode out to a hill where when I was a youngster of 9, my grandfather said to me, "Son, this is ours. It's yours, your daddy's, and mine." He said my granddaddy settled here after the war. That new tank's where his house used to be. He wanted to cowboy and live in the West, come to Texas from East Tennessee. The longhorn were wild as a deer in them breaks. With a long rope, he caught him a few, and with the money he made from trailing them north, he proved up this homestead for you. When the railroad got closer, they built the first fence where the river runs through the east side. Then when I was a button, they built these corrals. And that winter, my granddaddy died. He said my father took over and bought up more range. With purebreds, he improved our stock. Windmills looked like they grew out of the ground. And that land got as hard as a rock. And during that Dust Bowl, we barely hung on. The wind tried to blow us away. But it seemed that the Lord took a liking to us. He kept turning up ways we could stay. As my father grew older, he gave me more rain. We'd paid for most all of this land. And by the time he went on, I was running more cows. And your daddy was my right-hand man. His eyes got real cloudy, took off in a trot, and I watched as he rode out of sight. And though I was a child, I knew I was special. And I'm feeling that same way tonight, because not many years later, my daddy was killed on a ship in the South China Sea. And for 20-odd years now, we've made this ranch work. 2 cowboys, my granddad and me. And now that he's gone, things are certain to change, and I reckon that's how it should be, but 5 generations have called this ranch home, and I promise it won't end with me, because I've got a little one home in a crib, and when he's old enough that he'll understand, from the top of that hill, I'll show him his ranch, because like me, he was born to this land. Well, as my old daddy would say, we got this one saucered and blowed. It's time for us to ride on out of here. We got lots of work to do. And we thank you for riding along with us. We hope we taught you something about the cowboy you didn't know, or maybe brought back an old memory. I'd like to ask you to listen for us on Cowboy Corner on your local radio station. Be sure you pick up the newest edition of Cowboys and Indians magazine at your local newsstand. And the boys and I, old Dan and Jake and Leon and Badger, we'd like to invite you to join us next week, right here in the bunkhouse. Adios, y'all.